Today I wanted to talk about how, as of a couple months back with the official release of Summer Pockets Reflection Blue, we have now seen a shift to where Studio Key was pretty much like the company that could do no wrong, and now people are being a lot more heavily scrutinizing their work, seeing how things are going to be going forward, and also retroactively how it's kind of impacting their reputation and their releases overall. We're going to be diving into some of the things that I've seen over the past couple of months and also adding a little bit of my own personal take on the matter. So let's get into it. So to those of you that either weren't there or weren't made aware of what happened a couple months back in the middle of the summer this year, Summer Pockets Reflection Blue finally released on Steam after quite a few years of waiting. I want to say from off of the top of my memory, we were originally looking at a release of springtime 2024, and that time frame came and went, and we didn't hear anything else from Summer Pockets Reflection Blue all the way up until however 1 or 2 weeks before release, to where we finally got confirmation that it was still real. It came a little bit in the middle of when the Summer Pockets anime was airing, and a lot of people thought that if we weren't getting any news on Reflection Blue, it was going to drop around that time, but maybe even a little bit before or at release, and had to wait an even longer amount of time into the anime airing before we finally got that confirmation. And I have no actual proof as to whether this is the case or not, but bear with me. I almost feel like I have a little bit of a working theory as to why this was maybe the case. When you think about stuff like Clannad or Fate/stay night, people will maybe watch the anime and then get into visual novels because, oh hey, I heard that Fate/stay night was a visual novel. But maybe depending on which series you go into, you might never actually read the source material because you feel like you've already fully experienced it through the anime. And I almost feel like Key might have had Summer Pockets Reflection Blue just sitting in a vault for a good amount of time as they were trying to prep up and get the anime out. And then once the anime was out, they still didn't give any information as to the official English release of Reflection Blue because they wanted people to get invested in the anime, realize that the anime didn't have the content that was, added in through Reflection Blue. So that way then they could go to the anime watchers and say, hey, if you enjoyed the story of Summer Pockets and you want even more, we have even more in this content that's releasing in, let's say, a week or two. Like I said, I have no actual evidence as to that actually being the case, but I almost feel like that's a good workaround, right? That maybe Key's a little bit, not distraught, but a little bit of how many people have watched Clannad but haven't read the source material, bought Clannad off Steam. So this is their workaround for maybe nudging people into buying Reflection Blue. But if that was the case, it ended up blowing up in their face, because when Reflection Blue finally did drop, we saw something that was kind of unprecedented when it came to releases of Key visual novels, where upon release there was a pretty heavy wave of backlash that came about because people were talking about things as far as censorship, as well as UI changes and how the game didn't really feel like something that they had grown attached to when they played either the original, or in the case of, I think I've noticed a lot of Key fans, they'll double or even triple dip on titles to where they will buy and play the original untranslated version of a visual novel, and then read whatever fan patch that might actually happen, and then when the official release comes out, they're the first ones to buy it and then go around word of mouth and tell people, hey, you should buy it too. Ended up coming back to bite them because a lot of people were not happy with the release of Reflection Blue. And I think Key was pretty fast to act on going ahead and reverting the changes. They provided a patch, I want to say a little bit over a month after release, to where you can now actually see all of the content that was originally in Reflection Blue. They have not really fixed the UI as far as one thing that people were really angry with, but overall I noticed that going back to the Steam page of Reflection Blue, it was originally mixed and then dipped into being mostly negative, and now months later it is quote unquote back to normal, where it's a mostly positive set of reviews for Reflection Blue. People went back and changed the reviews after the patch dropped. One other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was the fact that I didn't even really hear about the patch from official sources. I had to hear it secondhand from people that say, hey, there was going to be a patch. Another little like weird instance to where I almost feel like Key cares significantly less about their Western like customers than those that are native to Japan, just because of like how they provide their information to their customers through Twitter, and how there is no like actual English Twitter account. There kind of is just only the Japanese one, and you're kind of relying off of that. So it's like another little thing of like, okay, well, I'm surprised that they were pretty quick. I almost feel like Key could have just brushed off the controversy and just kept chugging along, but surprisingly was pretty quick to get it fixed. But despite the fact that it's fixed, and there has been a lot of people going back saying, okay, yeah, Reflection Blue is good again when it was originally bad, is now I've seen more and more people talking about like retroactively. I almost feel like if my like working theory as to why Reflection Blue got delayed is true, I almost feel like Canon and Air, the English releases for those two classic or like retro Key visual novels, ended up getting English releases on Steam, is maybe in part due to the fact that, you know, Reflection Blue was just sitting in a vault, so they had a lot of time in their hands to be like, oh shit, we're not releasing anything. You know what? 20 years later, let's go ahead and release the English release of Canon. Right, so we got Canon and Air, and surprisingly, around the time of Canon, people were like, there was a little bit of like information going around, people saying, oh, you know, it has cropped CGs. There's like this one CG that was like taken out of the game. Maybe the original release of Canon is the definitive version in quotation marks. Kind of was just like a, you know, passing thought that was going around in the community, but it was something to where people were kind of like being a little bit more like scrutinizing of Key titles, to where now later when we got Air, it was kind of the same deal. There was a lot more talk about, oh hey, it has cropped CGs, this and that, and I've been seeing more people now actually talking about, oh, do the H scenes in the older Key titles, are they relevant? Should I play the original with the fan translation rather than buying the official translation? And I've been seeing more and more people actually say, maybe that's something you could look into. If I really wanted to add fuel to the fire, I would say maybe Air has one particular H scene in the original release that is like story relevant, but I would say is actually story relevant for the wrong reasons and actively makes the game worse, because the H scene that I'm talking about, the scene that follows, and also like retroactively goes against like actual like lore and like character traits that are built out across the entire route, to where you can go from that H scene into the scene following it, and it just feels so disjointed, feels so like it's actively going against the actual story that they're trying to tell, that I would say that's an example of why maybe I don't like Air as much, because, you know, I read the older release of Air and was like, whoa, there's so many inconsistencies. But that was like something that was a sentiment that was shared among a lot of the visual novel community for the longest time now, to where people said Key visual novels have H scenes in like some of the older releases, but that it was actively better that they didn't have H scenes because the H scenes were so bad. And that sentiment has kind of shifted a little bit ever since the release of Reflection Blue, to where I'm now seeing more and more people actively go back and say, hey, am I missing out on content by playing the official versus the fan patch? I'm wondering, you know, how many months we're gonna go until I see the first post about somebody saying, hey, is Little Busters on Steam a garbage version of the game? Should I just play an older, like, original version? Because for whatever reason, Clannad didn't have H scenes, but the game to follow, being Little Busters, they ended up having them. Even so-called the like Little Busters Ecstasy Edition. I guess in a way, Tomoyo After is also kind of notorious for being like an H game in a way, but I don't know. I am wondering, because like, I would say that Little Busters is an amazing visual novel, doesn't need any sort of H content, and I'm kind of waiting to see, when am I going to see the first person to talk about, hey, is Little Busters English Edition on Steam bad? And I think actually, like, for an example, Little Busters, I want to say is probably an example of like how it was good that we got it many years down the line, because Little Busters is kind of the same as Summer Pockets, to where there was like two versions. I would almost say that the 3 extra routes that are added for Little Busters in their second release was kind of like almost treated as like DLC, rather than how with Summer Pockets, it's this like, there was a cliffhanger specifically at the end of the game, to where you knew as somebody reading Summer Pockets base game that it was an unfinished visual novel and that you're going to be waiting for the later release where they're going to ask for more money. Little Busters is a like complete experience, and those extra 3 routes that came later on into Little Busters like Lifespan were like treated in a way to where they didn't have main story ripped away, and the fact that the English release had all of it complete at launch was like really nice, and is an example of maybe Key was treating their Western player base quite nicely, because they could have done exactly what they did with Summer Pockets and asked their fans that are maybe like known for double or triple dipping on their releases to buy the older version of Little Busters and then a newer version with extra content down the line. But then also I tried looking around because I couldn't find it, but I swear I remember seeing that their newest like big visual novel that they're going to be releasing, called Anemoy, or however you pronounce it, I could have sworn there was either some sort of like statement or like fine print on one of their like promotional like material things that said that Anemoy at release was going to be a full complete visual novel, in like difference to how Summer Pockets released, where it was a split release. Right? So I could have sworn I saw that somewhere. I couldn't find it. So I would say take that with a grain of salt. But like, if that's actually true too, I almost wonder how much that controversy with the Steam release of Reflection Blue has impacted Key's like inner thinking of like how they're going to go forward and how they're going to advertise their games going forward, how they're going to approach making content. Because I think in a way it is good that people aren't just blindly buying whatever Key is making now, but at the same time, it's just something I kind of want to talk about because of how we have shifted so rapidly to where I would say I think it's been like 4 months since the release of Reflection Blue on Steam, and now we have gone from, Key was at the top of any other visual novel company as far as like reputation wise. How long have they kind of just like coasted off of the thought of, hey, that's the company that made Clannad. And now we are kind of seeing that shift to where people are heavily scrutinizing every little thing, going back to older releases that people pretty much unanimously said was good, and now kind of being like, okay, well, I don't trust them anymore. So it's something I kind of want to talk about, because I also think I've been a little bit in that camp ever since I read the original release of Summer Pockets, however many years back now, to where I feel like there was a lot of people that played Reflection Blue with the fan translation. I wasn't one of those people, and I got burned by the official original release of Summer Pockets, and I've kind of been in that camp as well. I think when you look at stuff like how they've been doing the approach to like Heaven Burns Red as well, I know people kind of share that sentiment with like FGO, where they have the disdain for like, oh man, it's just gotcha. I want new stuff, new like full box visual novels, and I don't feel that way at all when it comes to Fate. But I think when it comes to Key, I kind of do like feel that kind of sentiment. It's like, okay, they're wasting time on something that is not going to be permanently around. There are kind of, for the longest time, Canon and Air weren't translated. And I was thinking that they weren't ever going to get translated, because I think in some ways, both those titles for the longest time were kind of considered freeware among the visual novel community, where it was like, okay, well, you couldn't really buy it, but then, you could quote unquote play it, right? I was just like a little bit of like, okay, well, I have no idea like what Key's doing, right? They haven't made any like big releases in a long time. You think about how they've just been doing smaller stuff like Loopers and Stella of the End, and only now did we get like Reflection Blue after however many years it's already been out in Japan, and now they have announced Anemoy. I wonder if now that Key has gotten like most of the stuff off their plate when it comes to English releases, now that they have Canon and Air out, that maybe they can expedite that process between the Japanese and the English release of Anemoy. Fingers crossed. I know they still have Cood Wafter to drop at some point, hopefully. But like apart from that, I don't know. I think it is a good thing that people have been criticizing Key a bit more and have been like heavily scrutinizing whatever they've been doing and how they release their games going forward. So it was just something I figured would be kind of interesting to talk about. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Wave, and I will see you next time.